Welcome, everybody, to the From Experience podcast. I'm Thomas Meister, your host, here with the super amazing co-host, Eric Peterson. Eric, how are you doing today?
These are some of my favorite days, is having conversations with incredible people. So whenever I'm on this, chances are it's a really good day.
Awesome. Amazing. We have Gina Myers, Regional Vice President and Producing Branch Manager for CrossCountry Mortgage. Gina, how are you doing today? What's cracking?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys. I'm really, really honored and excited to be here and chat with you. And yeah, let's get it going.
Awesome.
Honored you set the bar high.
Gina, I always like to kind of ask people who, so you and I are kind of just meeting for the first time. How do you have the unfortunate pleasure of knowing Eric Peterson?
How do I know Eric?
Yeah.
Oh, well, he was so kind to reach out after a Dave Savage interview that I did. And I'm always impressed actually by your reach out because it's very thoughtful. And it's not the normal, like, hey, let me just give you a ring and, just kind of roll off the tongue what's going on. I think his calls are very intentional and thoughtful and complimentary. So of course I was happy to connect with him and yeah, chat more about what makes us tick.
No, yeah, Eric, the moment I met Eric, I could always tell that he's very intentional and doesn't need to have an agenda to be connected with really awesome people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had the pleasure of just, meeting with him a few times and hearing some of those conversations. And there is actually no agenda. It's about just, helping somebody or just being connected with them, because you never know, we don't know what the future holds. And so as things change and evolve, hey, if you're able to add value to somebody, that's where it should be, right? Like if you remove, this is actually something I'm stealing from Eric because I took this from him, is if you remove the money from the equation, you'll make a better decision. So
true. So true.
I feel like I'm the guest, but on that point,
I'm just picking on
point.
Actually, we pick on each other a little bit here, Gina. You'll see that there's always some fun, back and forth happening.
I was in the car the other day with my family, and as I was driving, I could hear my kids in the back kind of chattering, and I heard my daughter say, very sarcastically, how cool her parents were.
Aww.
And I'm like, I heard that, and then she's like, what? I said you were cool, and I'm like, but I heard the intent in your voice. I mean, it wasn't meant to be true. It was meant to make fun. I can't remember whether it was music or something, but I think intentionality is important. And I think the way that we treat people is important. And it's why I love, doing these podcasts with incredible people is we get referred to people continually who like kind of exude that. I see it more as a collective as a whole, like with my group, with my people and how I treat them versus this selfish mentality of how do I get ahead by destroying anybody in my path?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, on that note, if you don't have a specific question, Tom, I'll jump in again.
I know what you're going to ask. Why don't I have Purell in my background? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't actually think I have any here in the office, but
you must not be clean or care about germs.
No, I'm telling you, I know a lot of people that get sick quite often. I feel like Tom's always sick, but I'm not going to make a correlation.
Allergies.
Whatever. Sure. You ever realize people do that? But anyway, we're getting off topic. Here's the thing. I'm going to share something with you, Gina, that somebody that I've known for probably 15, 16 years told me. Mm-hmm. Perfect metaphor because I'm actually drinking green tea. But he said, Eric, people are like tea bags. You never know what they're made out of until you put them in hot water.
Ooh.
Which will kind of lead us into the topic that I'd like to steal
that later.
It's good. It's really, really good. And here's why, because I think most of us, when things are really good and we're not stressed out, we're typically on our best behavior, right? Mm-hmm. It's when it's stressful or scary, whenever there's like a negative emotion behind it, like how we treat people then probably gives us the most insight as to who somebody is, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, as long as you've been in the business, the people that work for you, like I'd love to really dig into your mentality around how you treat people, like why they stay, how you add value to them, like that kind of thing.
Okay, perfect. Well, on that really cool, one-liner that you just gave, I'll also say, this is a little different, but Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. And obviously that's related to investors and people that really in a bull market, you think they're the best, right? But we're experiencing right now a little bit of a different time. It is simply still a market, right? It's a living, breathing market, but it is not as easy, let's say. And when that first started, when I first started feeling that, I did, I am a human. I did sort of lose some sleep, right? About my people, about keeping everyone together, and uncertainty on the future. So I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't concerned about that and what would happen mostly to my people, because I know Gina's going to be here. I'm going to be here, right? But like, how many people can I bring with me was my main concern. Until I like you guys, listen to podcasts, listen to books, go to coaching, and changed my mindset to reframe the comment of, or the thought of, have I been swimming naked? And no, I haven't, right? Like I've implemented process, systems, relationships, team culture, to be successful. And now my brain has totally switched, and I really wish it would for many others who I care for, that they can just knock it out of the park, right? I don't think many of us have ever had an opportunity like we've had in our lifetime that we have right now. And so, yes, there's going to be a lot of attrition. Yes, there's going to be people that exit the market or exit the business, and whatever business it is. But those of us that lean into the opportunity, that, every single day focus on actions, reactions, mindset, and keep doing the things, right? Every single day I have I'm a creature of habit. I do the same things. My team holds me accountable. You can see I have a consequence wheel behind me. I hate being punished. So yes, if I don't do my things, I have a consequence. So, I'm doing those things though to grow and to keep them and grow them. And it's like on the horizon, like the phoenix rising from the sun, like that will be me. That will be the team, So I believe that to my core. I believe people will be more successful by working with me than anyone else. And I relay that concept daily to my team and to my referral partners. So I would say a lot of the leadership is really around mindset and helping people reframe, what they're going through.
So we don't typically make a huge sidebar, but you really captured my attention when you said a consequence wheel. I would love for you to. I'd love to see it. So tell me about the concept of what it does and what's on it. I got to know what's on it.
That's actually what I was going to say. Is give us some examples.
Oh,
of
I
what
can
is
read
on
them
the
too. I have them memorized. So I am, in our coaching program, they ask you, how are you motivated by praise, by rewards, like material things, or by punishment? And I'm always like, I love to be praised. I don't need a trophy, but I love praise. Probably why Eric got my attention. Compliments, like, oh yeah, okay. I really like that. And so, but I found that I wasn't always doing the things. I would get 75% of the way and say, well, I did my best for the day, turn out the lights and go home. And so I was like, if I'm going to be better on the other side of this, I have to be more efficient. I can't just work more, even though my husband tells me you're working a lot, but I need to be more efficient. So my coach said, well, then it sounds like you need a consequence. Do you have that fun wheel in your office? Which most of the time we spin it for Fun Friday. Whoever wins Fun Friday, there's a gift, right? And I said, I do have a wheel. So I talked to my team and I said, I owe this to you, right? This is my main job, is to bring in business. And I'm letting you down if I don't do that. So I need your help. And in order to empower you, I need you to hold me accountable. Now, when you say that to your assistant, right? She's not going to be like, you told me, right? She wants to keep her job. So I empowered them by creating this wheel. So what's on it? So they got real excited about it. Too excited in my opinion. But
they came up with the things that are on it.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So one of them is working from home. I really like coming into the office because the collaboration is key. And I don't really understand how people will be able to grow in their career without being in front of each other. So they were like, we all get to work from home and stay in our PJs. Okay. One is I need to, if I don't do it, stop what I'm doing and in my like regular clothes, run a mile around the office. Another one is I have to do like a chicken dance, it was like silly dance on social media. Another is I have to host happy hour that night, go out for happy hour. And then another is buy lunch for the office. And then another is fill up everyone's gas tanks. This is like,
Ooh,
coming off of like really high gas prices. So that's what they are
that's
right
so
now.
interesting.
You know what, the most eloquently anybody ever put it to me was, and I didn't really understand the concept because they sound like the same thing. You're either motivated towards pleasure or away from fear. You
Yes.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and what I've realized, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is I think people that are typically are motivated towards pleasure tend to be in sales because it's higher risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus people that are really motivated away from fear, which is
For
they
sure.
need that
Safety.
consistency and stuff like that. But what was interesting was I remember, sure, I think it was maybe a year or so after I'd heard that, I was working with somebody that was going through like a really difficult time, especially financially.
Sure.
And me, I'm kind of in the middle. It wasn't until later in not later in my career, but you know, when the first mortgage meltdown happened, that I did it through blind courage to try and be motivated towards pleasure than away from fear, right? I mean, I a lot of responsibilities, but this guy was going through something that it was brutal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
his and my solution would have been, cut your expenses,
Mm-hmm.
make better
Mm-hmm.
decisions. This guy literally went out and bought a brand new truck, like, and not like a
Whoa.
cheap truck, like a super expensive truck.
Whoa.
Okay.
And when I asked him why, he's like, well, because now I got to pay for it. And so he wasn't motivated away from fear. He was motivated by the fear to get towards pleasure, and it worked for him.
Interesting.
Yeah, I still
Interesting
don't get it.
motivational strategy.
Yeah, it was. But listen,
Most
just
people
so
don't do that. It's
most
not.
people don't do that, and I will tell you though, I've now known this person for gosh, probably getting close to 30
Does
years.
does he still have the truck?
No, no, but that was
Does
I
he
used
have
to
a
know him
new
a long
truck?
time ago. No, it's worked for him. He does it every time. Like he'll get into something like a really bad financial situation, go
Mm.
do something like that. But that's what I don't know how it helps him dig out of it, but he
Hmm.
does really, really well. It's
That's
crazy.
interesting. That's a very risky strategy. One part of me is like, oh, I should try this, and then I'm like, this does not sound safe. Like,
It really doesn't.
Yeah, no,
no.
I cannot relate to that. I can understand it. Although, I guess my only comment there is, as you get older, the really cool part beyond, obviously none of us like getting older and wrinkles and whatnot, but getting older, I think you just know more about who you are and what makes you tick. And I love that. I love that so much because I think during your life, there's different moments, high school, middle school, college, and you think how you thought and felt and hung around, and it's just so neat to like look back on that as your older self and learn from it and realize who you are and comfortable in your own skin. So if
Yep.
that's what motivates that gentleman, then more power to him.
Yeah. No. One of the things, one of my one-liners that I've heard, right, is that leadership when times are good isn't real leadership. It's when things are hard. Like, okay, that's the kind of leader that you actually are. So I just wanted to ask because I feel
So
like
true.
having a process, right,
Mhm.
really defines like during hard times, like how you respond and how you react. And you also talked about mindset, right? So, I'd like to talk in a second about maybe some of the coaching or,
Sure.
self improvement that you've invested in and how that journey has worked for you. I wanted to ask
Sure.
real quick, when did you create the consequence wheel? Like, at what point was it a good time or a bad time?
A bad time. I mean,
A
it
bad
was
time.
a couple of weeks ago, right? So,
Okay,
I
wow.
mean, I don't know if bad is the
Well,
right way,
sure,
right?
sure.
Tough,
Challenging.
challenging, right? Challenging because with the coaching, they are, they're upping the outreach, right? So there was so many people we have to call on Mondays. They've increased it by 10%. And doing uncomfortable things, which we all know result in positive outcome. Every time I've been the most uncomfortable, something good happens. So that positive reinforcement is certainly there for me because I know that that's what happens. And I want to drive myself to do it. And it's hard to self motivate, you know what I mean? Sometimes. And those around you, maybe maybe you're superior to them. So it's hard for them to have the power to tell you what to do. And I need it on a day to day. My biweekly coaching call is lovely and I get all pumped up, but like, I kind of need the day to day coach telling me what to do. So I empowered my team that way. And that was during a time when I wanted to increase the output of effort.
Yeah. No, like if you're not uncomfortable, right? If you're comfortable, then you're not growing.
My favorite quote. Yeah, get uncomfortable. The most uncomfortable you can be, right? And that's when you grow the most.
You know what though? I will tell you that, I really appreciate people. I'm going to tell you about somebody really specific. Won't obviously keeping the names out of it and stuff like that. But there was somebody that I was talking to, probably I want to say earlier this year. It's him. He's a great producer too. He's got a team. He doesn't have any loan officers that work for him, but he's got a team of 4 people that work with him. And I know that he gives so much of the accolades of his business to his team because they've been together for so long.
Yes.
And as I'm sure most people did, his team made an incredible amount of income during 2020, 2021.
Right.
And as things became more challenging or tougher,
yes,
what he was talking to me about was he was working his tail off trying to keep them at that same income.
Yes.
And I'm like, I think people understand that we did really well because the market was crazy, right? And to believe that they didn't feel like they got the reward based on what happened, how do you not believe that they're also going to realize that, on the other side of that is going to be, it's not going to look as great, based on what's going on. And the amount of pressure that puts on people in a capacity where, and very similar to you, where you have people that work for you that you feel truly responsible for.
Yes.
There's a good and a bad. The good is the fact that you care that much about people shows who you truly are as a leader, right? Like, it's not like, hey, times are tough, you're all gone. It's how do I make this work? The negative becomes, all that additional stress and pressure of figuring out like this is my family and how do I keep them together and stuff like that. So, if somebody were to come to you with, kind of that same thought process of like, how do I deal with that kind of stress as a leader? Like, what would your best advice be to somebody like that?
Sure. Well, I just went through it myself, and you're exactly right. I lost a lot of sleep wondering how am I going to keep the group together, right? I built a team that would support a 200 million plus production. And I don't have that right now. I will probably end up around like 110 or something. So I didn't need that many people to support. And I spoke with the president of my company and he said, you cannot outrun this. This isn't something that you can like magically outrun. It ebbs and flows. And I hadn't been in a situation where it was addition by subtraction in my career. 10 years before I got into mortgage, I was in corporate, I salaried position in commercial real estate. I switched into mortgage, grew my team, and that's all I knew. That's all I knew was growth, growth, growth. And then when I got to the point of having to make some really hard decisions, I probably spent too much time thinking through it because I tend to do that as well. But I will tell you that once the decisions were made, I do think we went about it in the right way. I obviously I kept my horses, right? My team, the people that have been with me that are the most important, I would say, right? That know exactly how to get the job done. I don't know how to say this because I don't want to offend anybody, of course,
They're
but
most
like
integral to your
I get
business
my horses,
character.
right? Yeah. And we let everyone go on the same day. There's a few people, and so I met with them and let them go. And then obviously we were like hugging, and they felt bad for me. Like I was like, it was kind of an interesting response. And then afterward, I wrote them a letter of recommendation, right? A referral from me, specific about them. And of course, I'm a resource for them. So it wasn't like, sorry, it's not going to work out. You've been working with me for 10 years. Bye. I continue to support and help them, but then I think most importantly, afterward, I gathered the rest of the team and we had a deep dive meeting. And I said, I put my arms around them as I need you now more than ever. We're going to get through this together. And there were tears and emotion, and they're so grateful for you, Gina. I'm like, wait, what? Like, I didn't actually know it was going to be responded. They were going to respond that way. So, in the end, I think they also felt that like the right decisions were made. And now it feels good. I mean, I hate to say that because there's less of us, but it feels right. And, everybody knows what they're doing. There's not multiple people doing the same thing. And we are all super focused on, being successful and, growing still. So did I answer that question?
No, you did. And the nice part about sharing is, look, I know it's a hard topic for people to even discuss, but you know what? Just and you may have seen it too, but just in my tenure, I've just known so many people that even owners of companies who almost went bankrupt because they tried to hang on to everybody because they felt terrible.
Yeah.
But then there's somebody else that I know that's like, he's a great guy, but very transactional. He's like, no, he's like, I'm going to cut off my hand to save the arm, which totally makes sense. But you can tell there was no real emotion about just, letting people go. But it's, at least to me, it's always difficult. It was something that I was always really bad at for a long time because I always felt that it was maybe my failure in having to let somebody go. But
100%.
Yeah, and that's really difficult. But hopefully, somebody watching this that is going kind of through the same thing will go, hey, look, I get it. I mean, I could lose everything or have to make some tough decisions, right? So
yeah. And you said that was, I guess, your first time really going through something through that type of experience, that in that way. And
yes,
well, this is called the From Experience podcast. So I'll point it out now that you have that experience. And I guess to what I was mentioning earlier, and I guess I wanted to ask you that question now, was obviously the learning never stops, right? You mentioned a couple times you're in a coaching group. You continue to just add, obviously, to yourself, right? You continue to get experience and to, get new strategies and processes. Like, is there something that you feel like, at what point did you maybe like hit kind of like a catalyst for growth? Or the other side of that, like, what is something you consistently try and do to make sure that you're growing, right? That you're self-improving?
And this is not related to like the most recent having to let go of people, right? Just like in general.
No, yeah, in general,
Okay.
because you can either, a process that started for you a while ago, or
I'm always curious when I talk to other people that are content in their jobs, where they'll say, I had a friend that said, I'm just sort of phoning it in, and this is unrelated to mortgage, and but it allows me to have flexibility with my family. So then I wonder, am I either crazy because
she didn't
I cannot even imagine phoning anything in, or do I not care about my family enough? You know what I mean? And I was like, what? Oh, sorry, Eric, were you going to say something?
No, you froze for a second. I'm like, oh no, it's like you left that part out and it's a mystery, but we did end up getting it. And
did Do you want me to repeat that?
No,
Or
yeah. So what happened was it just froze briefly, and I'm not sure if in the recording it's going to be that way. So yeah. So you mentioned that your friend had mentioned that he just kind of phones it in. So if you want to repeat
Yeah,
that
yeah.
part.
So we were talking about like jobs, and I love, and just like you guys, I love to ask people about, forward family occupation. It's all that good stuff. Get to a deep conversation. I can't stand superficial conversations. So asking about, her job and stuff. And she just said, you know what, I'm kind of phoning it in right now because I get to work from home and I get, my family and the situation. And so I thought maybe I'm a lunatic because I could never function that way. So what I question is it in my DNA, or maybe I don't care about my family as much as she does? I obviously don't think that's true, but I've always been driven to do better, or to grow. And I sometimes wonder, how do I turn it off? Right. And I know that's also a silly thing to say, but it's constantly on my mind of like, how do I do better, be better, grow, help others. And so I guess that's probably my DNA. And, my parents weren't sales, or I was never surrounded by anyone in sales in my whole, growing up. My dad was an electrician for the same company for 40 years, and my mom stayed at home and for most of the time. So there wasn't like anything I saw or was exposed to. But what I was exposed to, or what they constantly encouraged, was, additional practice. So I played softball and played in college, Division I, and so like they never pressured me to. It was never like that pressure that I probably put on my kids right now about, what were you thinking in that position? What were you thinking in that play or whatever? But my dad and I, every single day after practice, would go hit more balls. He would take me to the batting cage or take me to the tee. We always would do more, have more effort. What else can we do? The little things. So I think that that was instilled in me very young to, it was very basic and humble stuff that we did, practicing more with effort. And I just think it's now in my DNA to want to do more. So when I was at the corporate job, I was salaried and I was pretty bored, right? So like I was good at my job because I can get stuff done, but I wasn't engaged, and I wasn't excited. So I did a lot of soul searching and figuring things out. During that time, I created like a best practices group for women. I was in commercial real estate and commercial construction, so there's a ton of men. So I was like, where are the women, right? Like where are they out there in this world? How do you do construction management and then like, go home and take care of your kids because we worked all the time and weekends as well. So I created this group and I found a lot of success in creating something, right? Just like you guys are doing with this podcast, when you can kind of create something and get people involved, there was a lot of positive feedback. So when I left commercial real estate and got into mortgage, I remember walking around the office and saying, I would ask people, how do you get the phone to ring? How do you get business? How do you build your book? And the guys, sorry if I'm stereotyping, but they were mostly men, and they were sitting there and they said, oh, just look at my phone, wait for my phone to ring, and it will ring eventually and I'll answer it.
Very unintentional.
Yeah. And that was so confusing to me because I wanted to be intentional about it. So a woman in the office actually said, I've heard of this coaching program. It's called The Core. And I think you would really be interested in it because it's how to, build your business. So yes, I got into coaching pretty much right away, maybe about a year or two into mortgage, because I just felt like I was reacting to things all day long. I had no idea what my day would look like or feel like and how I would build my business, and got into coaching. And I remember my husband saying, do you really need to pay somebody to have them tell you what to do? Why don't you just pay me and I'll tell you what to do? And I said, no. And I was like, no. And he obviously understands now, but it has really helped put framework around your day-to-day activities, mindset, especially. And that I love that. I crave that so much, that feeling of, putting systems in place to be able to be more efficient and help more people.
So
you
cool.
hit on so many, I wrote so many notes just based on that dialogue that you had, because you hit on so many things that I love talking about.
Mhm.
And I'm going to hit them in order, but the first thing that you brought up is like, hey, you might think that you're wired different, and you probably are to some degree,
Mm.
right? But here's where, if you look at anybody that's really successful in what they do, or like, let's just take people that you see them on ads that they're just completely in shape, just barely even human. You're like, how do you even do that? Like I
Right.
go daily and I look nothing like that, right?
Right.
But you realize like the discipline that it takes because they want it so bad, right?
Mhm.
One of the funniest stories that I've always shared was when I was a kid. I always wanted to learn how to play the guitar, right? And when people would ask me why, I'd be, oh, because I think it's cool. Yeah, I thought it was cool, but I also thought that girls liked it. Like they'd like somebody that
Yeah.
played the guitar,
End
right?
result.
Yeah. So that was my real intent, right? But here was the funny part was it's one of those things that you feel like you missed out on. Then as you get older, you're like, well, why would I want to learn now? You just kind of just assume it's never going to happen. And then years and years later, as my kids got older, they wanted to take guitar lessons. And so I was excited going, well, if you learn, then maybe one day you can teach me. And
Mm.
so, got them all guitars, they're playing them. And just this one day, their guitar teacher, I guess, said, hey, do you want to join in? I'm like, yeah. I get in there. 30 minutes later, I'm like, you know what? Not for me. So
Yeah.
the point really just became is that I thought it was something that I really wanted, but once I put the effort into it and I saw how much work it was, the balance wasn't there, right?
Mhm.
And the other thing, which I think is really important that most people don't think about when it comes to phoning it in, is when you realize how much of our life we spend
Yes.
working side. Do we do it
Mhm.
just going through the motions to make money
Yeah.
to live,
Right.
or if you're truly lucky, I believe that your highest and best use, your core competency, and what you really love to do, if you're really lucky, they're all the same thing. And very
Mhm.
rarely is that true.
Mhm.
And if you look at, here's a question I love to ask people, because when you look at the most successful people that are in our industry specifically,
Mhm.
everybody thinks they just know them well enough to go, oh, well, if I call them and we offer them like more money, right?
Mm.
Or
Mhm.
a better this or a better that,
Mhm.
without even knowing them, right? What they don't realize is just by asking a simple question, which I've asked over the last year and a half because I enjoy it. I'm like, hey, look,
Mm.
we've all been at places that we've loved before and places that we've hated before. And
Mhm.
if we
Yes.
were to, and I'm going to ask you this question, may as well, on a job satisfaction scale, 1 to 10,
Mhm.
I want you to think the happiest you've ever been, right?
Mhm.
On the scale 1 to 10 of 10 being happiest, one like metaphorically you want to jump out a window, is
Mhm.
where would you put yourself on the highest you've ever been? What number would you put that at?
Right now,
Okay, what number?
I think is that what you're saying? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When I would say I'm actually quite happy right now.
Okay.
I mean, even in the people are like, oh, I have no loans. And I'm like, this is actually kind of exciting time for me because now that I have over 10 years of mortgage experience, which of course Tiger Woods says if you do anything for 10 years or like, the equivalent, that you're an expert. So I think my confidence is really high. I'm very calm. I know what I'm doing. I know how to work through solutions. Even though my team doesn't look the same as it did at its height, I feel like I have a lot more control, and it's exciting to see what's coming forward. When I went through tough, like my lowest point, right before I made a change into mortgage was probably my lowest point because I remember I had, two babies. I had like a 2-year-old and a brand new baby, and I was like, okay, let's go. Like, I have my children. Let's go take the career. And so I remember speaking to the president of the company or the equivalent, and I said, I really would like to know, like, what do you think is in store for me, or what are my next best steps? And they said, well, you just had a baby, so you probably don't want to work Fridays. And I was like, what? This clearly is not where I belong. I told you I've constantly was looking for people, looking for mentors, especially women in that industry, never found it. And, financially, I can tell you, all I wanted to make was $120,000. Like, I thought if I made 120 and my husband, made, and I never really even thought beyond that number, to tell you the truth, but I just wanted to make that. And all I wanted, and I remember coming up for a bonus, bonus at the end of the year. And I was really close to getting that number. And I thought I worked so hard because I did this deal for them. And they said, well, you were on maternity leave, so there won't be a bonus. And then I obviously went to HR. But after that, I felt this isn't the right place for me, one, financially, and two, they just don't get me. So that's when I really went in deep dove into strength finder type books, personality profiling, disc profiling. And I was so glad that I found that, because I clearly didn't know who I was. And that's going back to my initial comment to you. I really like where I am in life because I know more about me and what makes me tick. And so what I would say to younger people or people starting out is try to, go ahead and take those personality profiling, because it will help align you with what makes you happy, what makes you tick, and finding jobs associated with that. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be in sales. In college, why would you need to go to college, right? So I have a master's degree, obviously bachelor's degree, of course. So I felt like sales, that's hysterical. And little did I know that that's really what makes me tick, because there's the the education piece, the technical piece, but also the helping someone feel a way, right? That's really what sales, in my opinion, is. How do we make people feel so that they buy something from us, whatever that thing is? And so I would say I'm very happy and competent and confident too, and competent right now. And the time when right before I made the switch to mortgage was when I was in my darkest place, because I was stuck.
Now think about this. Okay, so now that both of those emotions have come back to you, right? Mm-hmm. What number would you give your highest?
Like I'm not a 10 right now?
No, and you can, that's fine. So let's just say you're a 10 right now, okay?
Okay.
What number would you say you were at your lowest?
Probably like a 4 or 5. Okay. I'm not I was never miserable. And so, yeah, sometimes I listen to podcasts. I'm like, wow, I never really had things that bad. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm not as relatable as some people that went through some really dark times. But I was not really that bad. I was always happy-ish. I just was looking for the fire, whatever that fire was. And I feel like I found it now.
And so, well, the reason I bring this up, and like I said, you're not going to have as much of a swing as possible, or as most people. But look, I would tell people I considered myself, for the longest time, for the large bulk of my career, I was never probably below a 5. Right. But it's not until you get below that you really appreciate those higher times, right? And so anybody that I've ever asked that question to that says they've been at a 4 or below, they would give up half of their income. And that's the number that they bring up, because I'm like, hey, what percentage of your income would you give up if you were at a 4 or below to get back to an 8 or above? And so, when you were bringing up, people that kind of phone it in or kind of coast or whatever else, I always wonder how much of that has to do with actual job satisfaction, loving what you do, loving the people, because there's people that they love the people that they work with. They may not love the job, but they love the people that they work with. And then there's others that love their job, may not like the people that they work with. But if you can get both, that's amazing. And funny that you bring up the story about income, because I remember, gosh, it was close to 20 years ago when I got in this business.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember the guy that essentially was that was hiring me. He's like, Eric, how much money you want to make? And I'm like, well, you know what? I knew how much I was making. So I was thinking, I'm going to shoot a little bit high and just see how that lands, because I didn't know any better. And I'm like, man, I'd be super stoked if I could make like 80 grand a year. And he's like, Eric, if you don't make 100, I'll fire you. And that was, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, that was all, really, I mean, I thought it was pretty funny. But another point that you made, sorry, just kind of going down the list here, was about, when it got into, for me, what translated well for me was truly around intent, right?
Mhm.
And so I, believe it or not, I started my career working at a car dealership,
Oh,
right?
neat.
And where I guess I was found or discovered or whatever else it was. But I used to work in parts wholesale,
Mhm,
and I
mhm.
didn't. The only thing I did really know was cars. I still do. I know everything about cars. I know about makes, models, how to fix them, you name it, right? Anything and
Wow.
everything about cars. And so when they put me in this role, it was I caught on really quickly. Just all I had to learn was how to use the computer system, and then they moved me into wholesale. Right? Didn't know what I was doing, but I always what I would do is I would either call up different places or actually go visit them and just say, hey,
Mhm.
my name's Eric Peterson. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. After that, what was I even selling? Right? They knew what I did. And so all I would do after that point, after they knew, was just shoot the breeze about the world or life or whatever else. And every time I would go to visit them, it was never, I never
Mm.
wanted to be Eric from this place. I just wanted to be, hey, here's Eric. I want to talk to this guy. Like I enjoy the conversation. And the funny thing is, to me, it came down to intent. Yeah, my intent was to garner business, but I figured if they needed me and they liked me, they'd use me. Right. And I
Yeah.
knew I knew that I would get a shot, and I was super successful in it. And I was stoked that it transferred here. That's like when I first reached out to you, my intent wasn't, you know what, I'm just going to tell her about how great where I work is and stuff like that. Was never the intent, right? The intent
Mhm.
was
Right.
I realized the value. If I look at my career, I did not get here by myself. There's people that
Mhm.
impacted me along the way, which leads me to my last point, that which was one of the things that I shared with people over at Sales Mastery was that,
Yes.
and this was around you bringing up coaching, is I don't think that going to those events are bad. I don't think getting coaching is bad, right? I think it's great. But something that most people don't tap into, which surprises me, is our vast network of incredible people who have a ton of answers that we have questions to, but we're either too prideful to ask or we just don't know how to approach it.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
really believe, I mean, because think about early on in your career before you ask a question where like, how do you get the phone ring? How do you do this? How do you do that? How many people you've met along the way that you would have felt comfortable now calling and saying, hey, how are you doing this? Or
Okay.
even on the flip side, how many people that you know that have watched your success actually call you and say, Gina, like, how do you do this? And it's not that they
Mhm.
don't want to know. It's do they have the courage to ask without whatever it is that's blocking them? And I'd love to figure out how to get people more open to just going, I think the more you share, the more others are willing to
Mm.
share as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Lead with that versus and then yeah, always if you're always open to sharing, then people will approach you as well.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
got
absolutely.
and perfect segue. I got a text yesterday from somebody, and I was a little ignorant to that this was even going on. But somebody I've known for years and years and years, and he sent me a text. He's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing about the increase in credit report fees? Sorry,
Mm.
fees. If you share, if you're willing to share with me, I'll pass what I hear from others to you."
Mhm.
Which I replied, "No quid pro quo necessary. I will always share what I know. I will find out. By the way, I said, just always know that I'm always willing to share whenever it's possible." Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, but that's my point is I wish he would have felt more comfortable just saying, hey, Eric, what are you guys doing about
Mhm.
this? As opposed to saying, hey, if you share with me, I'll share with you. I don't need that. But I think
Yeah.
that's just the way we're wired is people only want to help when there's something in it. And that's the part of this side of the business that I'd love to change. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
is there
agree.
anything that you can think of to help perpetuate that methodology or that thought process?
Well, I think where it stems from is that we are always somewhat competing with, other lenders, right? So it's that feeling of competition and coming from the client. So you feel like there's this enemy on the other side, which is unfortunate. But because there's plenty of houses, plenty of people, plenty of opportunities to help. Yeah, I mean, I was honored they invited me into like a local mastery group with just different lenders. And, I've come up against some of them. So I was like, oh, enemy. But, as soon as I met them, I was like, oh, I really like them. You know what I mean? And I do think we need to look out for one another because we all know clients can sometimes push us all to a point where it's like, this is anybody making any money on this deal? So I do think that there could be opportunities, if you do know the people, to not beat each other up as much. But yeah, how do I encourage sharing? Wow. You know, I guess anytime that someone asks me for something, I'm happy to share them because they have to implement it. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of the hardest part. I probably, I'm a little bit in my hole with like reaching out to other lenders. I probably reach out to more referral partners to try to share with them. Do you know what I mean? But that would obviously serve me. So no, this is like opening my eyes, I have to tell you, about sharing with other lenders
We know,
beyond my coaching group.
but see, look, that I always look for ways, and I always tell people, I'm like, listen, I'm never going to be that person that doesn't feel comfortable leveraging my relationships. I always will, because I've realized how much of an impact that is, right? And it doesn't mean always, people are always going to share, but you know what? You're going to come across people in your life, in your career, that change the way that you think. And the weird part about it is when you know it's the right thing to do, but yet
Mm-hmm.
everything that the world has taught you is counter to that idea, it's very difficult to really dive in and get used to. And here's kind of one of my points is that um, I was asked to do a speaking engagement for a competitor, and I was actually shocked, right? And not because anything other than I can only see how that can be perceived by the people that work there, right? And long story short, it went up the flagpole, and I even told this person, I'm like, there's no way that they're going to go for that. Like, I appreciate you thinking that. And by the way, I think I do a very good job at leaving the companies out of it, right? Because there's
Mm-hmm.
there's always something of value that you can bring to the table. And really, what I wanted to shine a light on was intent on
Mm-hmm.
how bad our side of the business has gotten over the years, and how we can fix it as a community, as a group. And anyway, so it didn't fly, but previous to that, I had asked just the people that I work for, and I asked them, I'm like, hey, how would you feel if I did a presentation for a competitor?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't surprised at the answer, right? And the answer was essentially, you know, how can we be a group that talks about this abundance mindset and sharing what we're doing with everybody else? Because what they're trying to what they brought to me was something bigger than what we think, which was the changes that we want to make for us all to benefit from. We can't do alone. We have to do it as with the mindset of we may work at different companies, but we're on the same team, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it was how can we say that and preach that and then not allow you to go do this? So not only would I tell you that we're going to be fine with it, but I would encourage it, right? And it's that kind of thing that I share with so many people of we've just been trained to believe that there's certain things that we guard as our secrets, but the bigger picture
Sure.
is, and I believe this, if you think about our industry and how much we have to pay to acquire debt, right? I can go to the bank and get a loan for 500 grand, and they're going to go, here's your money. This is the interest rate you have to pay on that money to
Mm-hmm.
pay it back,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
That's my fee. But in mortgage, we pay an absorbent fee just to get the debt, and then we pay interest on top of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
when you think about that, you have to realize that at some point somebody's going to go, well, how do we eliminate that, right?
Mm.
And if our only intent is to just to be able to say, I did a really good job at holding this person's hand and educating them through the process, then it's not going to be long before we have some way of streamlining all of our documents. I mean, we're doing it right now to make originators' job easier. Is, hey, how can it scan all the documents so that somebody doesn't have to use a set of eyes and it's quicker, easy, less painful, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, how long before if we're not adding an abundance of value to the client side,
Mm-hmm.
not just for 30 days, but for,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of their lives or our lives or whatever, then how easy is it going to be taken over by, I don't know, an app or
Robots.
something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so like that's the thought behind it. So I guess my point is, like, I'm going to go on forever about this, but my point is that everybody that I've come across for the most part that's successful, like you, right? I guarantee you that there's some intellectual property that you have that's valuable to me, and my hope is quite, the same is true for you, right? But that's where I feel we're all missing the boat, is being so stuck in this person's my competitor, and that we don't often take the time to go, what can I learn from this person? How can they add value to me? And not only that, but I love to give back too. But
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see, and by the way, you're already doing because you mentioned it, how you've gotten together with a group of people that work at other companies, right? You'll
Mm-hmm.
find that the more vulnerable somebody will be, the more everybody will open up. It's very similar to mob mentality, right? Like somebody does something dumb and then somebody does something dumber on top of it, and then it just perpetuates. I believe the same happens when you get into like mastermind groups like that, where somebody goes, I can't believe you just shared that. Well, my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share something. So I think that's great. I think you're
Right.
doing your
Yeah.
part.
Sure. Well, that too. And I think the realization that you don't all have to be the same way or the personality or the same approach, right? I think this job, as many sales jobs, you can be who you are. And leaning into that authenticity and vulnerability and is where you will be the most successful. So going back, figuring out who you are and like leaning into that when you help your clients or your referral partners or your lender friends, right? You and I don't run our businesses the same way. We obviously don't say the same things to our clients. And I love that. Like, for a long time I thought, what do you say? I will repeat this script, right? Like, no, that's not how I say it. That's not me. And I like that everybody can be their own in the business, which is so neat.
Yeah.
And I think like even when someone says, oh, this realtor referred to somebody else, it's like, of course they did, because we don't all wear the same jeans, right? Like we're not all the perfect match. So I would prefer the realtor refer us people that we would fit with, right? Versus someone that we're not a good match.
Yeah, there's a huge human component to this, that
Yes.
this isn't a perfect equation that you can just always make work in your favor, right? You have to, prepare, and then when an opportunity comes along, right? Like, that's luck, right? Opportunity meets preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Even just being on this call, like I feel like I've taken some notes as well, Eric, and like it reinforces, right? Like it reinforces a lot of the things that we believe. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, when you were sharing that story, Eric, like I was thinking to myself, like getting help is actually a skill, and you have to
Good
have,
point.
you said courage, right? But you also have to have, I think, humility,
Mm-hmm.
because when you get in that room, Gina, with all those other people, like, and Eric, you touched on it, right? Like you're putting out this energy, right? Like if you're that giving type of person, right, you end up attracting, like, would you say, Gina, that being now in that group for a period of time, you have really found who you're in alignment with, right? And who share maybe a similar just cause or mission, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I was a little nervous initially, but you're right. Opening up, sharing stories, learning about them and their business or their company, it actually just supports that, okay, this is what I'm doing. This works for me. I don't have to do that or be that way, but I appreciate that you do it that way. You know what I mean? And I think asking for help is an extremely difficult thing to do.
Mhm.
So,
It really is. You know
yeah.
what's the
Wow.
crazy
Very
part?
good point.
It's not surprising that people don't typically ask people outside of the company, but it's crazy like when you hear about people that say we don't even collaborate within our own company,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Right.
they kind of do that whole, hey, we want to have these top producers on these calls and stuff like that, and the only thing they'll share is what everybody already knows. They don't really
Yeah.
share like the secret sauce. It's more of a, oh well, call more realtors or call your clients. Like they already know that. It's not like the, how do I make my business more efficient, or maybe what I'm saying is different anyway. But now we're at the point where this is actually my favorite part.
Well,
Do you
hold on,
want to
hold
do
on.
that?
There's one thing I want
Oh,
to add.
oh,
Hold on.
good.
because what you just said, I think I want to hit on, because a lot of the times people are trying to find a silver bullet, or they'll ask like cheesy questions to top producers, like, how did you grow your business? And I want to just acknowledge that I feel like maybe we think that this is so obvious, but there could be people out there who are like, how do I take it to the next level? Or how do I do some of those things? And I don't know, I want to ask you guys, do you feel like going outside of your organization to get help is actually one of those things that maybe is the catalyst for a lot of growth?
Not as well, yes and no, right? Yes, for the coaching, 1000%. I wouldn't be where I am today without having coaching help, which is, they're all lenders from different parts of the country within different companies. So yes, I would say that. But I also think it's a simple concept of realization that, just like you said earlier, we are humans. It's human to human interaction. You're selling homes, you're selling mortgage rates, really, but are we? No, we're not. We're selling a feeling. We're selling a perception. We're helping people have the confidence and clarity to move forward, whatever it is, to move forward in referring you, to move forward in locking in a rate or buying a home, right? So it's just making people feel and understanding that, you know what I mean? Like just meeting people where they are and helping them work through that thing so that they feel, that they can buy a home or send you a lead. You know what I mean? So ultimately, I think that was the biggest aha moment for me.
Nice. Cool. Eric, take it away.
Do you want to ask the inspiration question, Tom,
No,
or would you like
go
me
ahead.
to?
You go ahead.
So it's one of my favorite questions, but two questions, two-parter. Question one is, who inspired you growing up? And the second part is, who inspires you now?
Oh, wow. Okay. Who inspired me growing up? You know, as soon as you said it, my dad came to mind, just probably also because we were talking about him earlier. His effort is like none other. And even my husband will joke, because if he injures himself or something on the golf course, you've never seen someone put in the like physical therapy on, wakes up, does his push-ups, does his thing, does his stretches, eats the same thing. He is so,
Regimented?
diligent.
Consistent.
Yes, regimented, diligent, and just without a peep. And he's never complained. You talked about cursing earlier. The guy never curses, but he's very diligent, very practice focused. I mean, my mom would want to kill him because he'd go out and hit buckets of golf balls at night. You know what I mean? And so I would say he certainly taught me the work ethic and the practice mentality, right? I don't think any of us will ever be perfect, but I do think we can practice to get a little bit better every day. I would say that was very inspirational because I watched him do it. I lived with it. So I would say my dad. Who inspires me now? Oh boy. Okay, this is a tough one. Who inspires me? I mean, it's really my children, right? So I know this is sort of backwards, but like I can see things through them. You know what I mean? I can see them learning different concepts, whether it's through sports or academics or friendships, that is inspirational because they don't have any like preconceived, notions or decisions or thoughts about it. And they inspire me to be better every day. And it's quite funny because now we're at the point where they're teasing me and teasing, my whether it's my Philly accent or whether it's dad's always right. But sort of going full circle, Eric, because this is what motivates me. Earlier, you talked about your kids in the back of the car and what they said about you being cool. And I take a lot of pride in that, right? Because I like to, as I said earlier, I like how do people feel about me is important to me. And I will tell you that it is, as the holidays come up, my daughter came over to me and said, you had mentioned you wanted a bracelet with like some sort of inspirational saying or something on the bracelet. And I found this for you and I thought you might like it. And she showed me on her iPad, and it was a cute little bracelet and it said, badass. And so I was like, yes, you understand me. And you like that about me. You know what I mean? And I was like, I feel so seen. So that really honored me, it motivated me, inspired me, that I'm putting it out into the world, and also to her to realize that it's cool to be a badass, leader, boss, mom, right? Like you can be all those things. So when I beat myself up about maybe working later, or obviously I don't really miss anything, but like, maybe looking at my phone or something. Yes, that's not a good thing to do all the time, but I realize that she's absorbing that. You know what I mean? And I was pretty proud moment when your daughter tells you she thinks you think you're a badass. I don't know.
That's
It's just
awesome.
kind of funny moment.
I love
Well,
how that's interesting that when you were younger, it was kind of above you, and now that you're older, it's actually below you, right? Like your inspiration. That's pretty trippy. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
well, look, Tom, you'll get there too as your kids get older. I mean, when you're inspired by your kids, it's amazing. And and in some ways, when you think about it, is that as we get older, we get so desensitized to the world that
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite parts in a movie was oh gosh, what was that name of that movie? It was with Jeremy Renner. Shoot, I just had it too.
Did you
Anyway,
say Hurt
he
Locker?
goes
No.
off to
Oh,
Afghanistan or Iraq or whatnot. The Hurt Locker. The Hurt Locker. Did you ever see that, Gina,
Hurt
by
Locker.
chance?
You froze for a minute, but yeah, we're back.
Did you see that movie, The Hurt Locker?
Hurt Locker, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember that point where, I mean, he's doing is diffusing bombs, and it's like his adrenaline is always at a high level. Then he comes home and he's standing in the grocery store like this.
Yes.
And you can just feel that emotion of, this is like flatlining bored, right?
Yeah, the most mundane.
Yeah.
practice.
But he's staring at his kid in this playpen, and he's just staring at him, and he's amazed on the wonderment that his kid gets from the most simple thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's those things that I try and look at through my kids, of just having this more pure kind of thought, not having as much of the world, like, put these negative thoughts in your head, and just kind of feeling disproportionate to the way the world really is. But I think if you can be inspired by your kids as a parent, then you're seeing something in them that you admire, and it's usually around not only the way they see things and the way they think, but feeling like you're doing a good job, or you're doing the best that you can, and seeing that you're not ruining your kids and they feel a certain way about you is amazing.
Well, also it's cool when you can see them do things that you're not good at. I can't play the trumpet, nor do I can't stand Michael's arts and crafts. And so my kid, I'm like, how does anybody like that? I think that's really neat when you start to, the kids are better than you, when they become better than you in other things. It's pretty wild.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been that parent. I didn't know if it was right, but I would always be very competitive with my children, and I still
for
am.
sure, 1,000%.
Like, never to the point where like I just destroy them and stuff. Like, I would always just beat them by a little bit, right? But I'm telling you now, I mean, shoot,
Yes.
they're most of my kids are 17 or older, and so at this point now they're
definitely beating you.
They're beating me at things, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not only proud that they've gotten to the point where they are, but I can only imagine, and I hope they feel this way. How does it feel knowing that I never let you win, and you're winning and beating me on your own merit, right? And so anyway, I don't know.
I think I do destroy my 4-year-old. I destroy the 4-year-old.
You're the 4-year-old?
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and the 4-year-old is very competitive, like my wife. And hey,
nice.
I treat him like the one episode of Bluey. Do you guys watch Bluey? No,
I don't know what that is.
You don't have young kids. That's a new show. I think I know. I could, if you show me a clip, I could tell you what season and what episode that is. We watch it.
Is it like a blue dog or something like that?
It is the Blue Dogs. They're Australian. I love it. It's great.
Okay.
And they teach so many good things. But the dad in that show, there's an episode where the dad's like, exactly what you just said. He's like, you got to do it on your own. It's like, no, like, I'm not just going to let you win. Like, then you don't learn anything.
Still, yeah, crush your 4-year-old.
I'm going to continue to crush the 4-year-old for now.
He's probably already beating you stuff, Tom.
Actually, he does beat me at the matching game once in a while, like the card match. He's got a great I ask him, he learned this at school, but he starts to say, I ask him, how'd you do that or whatever? And he's like, I used my brain. And
Oh.
I'm like, that's adorable. That's cute.
Well, I will, in closing, I just wanted to share this, Gina. I will tell you that these are the things and the conversations that stick in my mind was that I appreciate that the very first time that I called you, you were very kind and very giving of your time on the phone. And those are the things that I never forget. I appreciate that about people because I understand that the world that we currently live in and the perception that comes off
Yeah.
on whatnot. But I do appreciate that. I will tell you, the, you know, just the way people feel about you in the industry. You may not always hear about it, but you know, I would love for people to say the same things about me. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think when you called me, by the way, you said, you answered. I said, you called me. I think sometimes people just, forward calls and stuff. But if my phone rings and I answer, I like to answer. I think maybe that's what it is. The secret sauce. Answer your phone.
Answer your phone. Yeah, that's another obvious pro tip right there. Answer your phone.
Well, the cool thing is like I love having conversations with people like years down the road of going, hey, do you remember how we first met? Because you never know where it's going to go. But I look at all the most amazing relationships I have with people in this business, and the large majority of them started with a phone call. And it's kind of crazy. Wow. So you just never know where it's going to go. But super appreciative of your time. I know we went a little bit over, but I love doing these things, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on.
It was my pleasure. I could talk to you guys for a few hours, I'm pretty sure. So
there you go.
Probably good that you noticed that we can, to cut it off. But I appreciate it so much. I wish you nothing but the best. It was a pleasure to get to know you better. And I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts and your different guests.
Thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll close it out. To anybody who, if you got something from this, feel free to give it a like, share it with somebody else who will get something from it. Really appreciate you, Gina, again, making the time. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.